right to say that you can't put a clip out of a New York Times article in your book? For those that don't know, you might explain that to them, that they're restricting things that are public. It's kind of like when Gibbs was told, say there's no drone program, when for a decade it was public. It's like saying there is no sun coming up in the morning. I mean, maybe you're not allowed to say that Army uniforms are green next.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, we had a partial victory by the fact that the Judge Collier, ruled flat out that the government cannot take information which I have testified to was in the public record and say that they cannot use that. That is, for example, one of the things that they actually tried to censor me on, which is totally ludicrous when you think about it, is my open testimony to Congress, which is part of the congressional record. The government, this administration attempted to say that information in the public record and in the congressional record could not be used by me in my book. That's how insane this got. And clearly they completely lost on that. We continue to contend, and the other issues the judge ruled with the government, as you mentioned, Alex, it's in the public domain. The information relating to my work in Afghanistan, the contents of the Bronze Star, all these things which they're now arguing should be classified, to me, are totally insane by the fact it's been in the public domain for almost 10 years. And it is almost an Orwellian attempt by the government, almost because they can do it. They're going back now, attempting to rewrite history. And to me, it absolutely makes no sense. It wastes the taxpayer money. In this case, because we did actually win on the account of the fact that they tried to keep out the clear testimony, they've lost that piece, and they're going to have to pay the court fees for my lawyer as well. So this is where, their continued obstinance about things that are clearly in the interest of the public to know, and them fighting it, it really makes it look...
sure. Well, it's also getting worse. I mean, I see the headlines every day where now the White House just said 2 weeks ago, no more four-year period. We're not going to respond, period. I mean, that's totally arrogant. It's totally illegal. But it's like opening the borders up. Now, I've got to shift gears because you're such an expert on Al-Qaeda, on ISIS, which obviously is the same Wahhabist group. What do you make of the FBI saying at least 49 states do have ISIS in them? This attack in Garland that it would have been in, like, Chicago or something. My God, it would have taken the police hours to respond, or imagine London. What do you make of that and the recruiting power of these groups in the West? Because, as you know, a lot of the recruits are being pulled out of the West.
Right. Well, two things. First, ISIS, unlike any other group within the modern era of our anti-terrorism effort, have adopted a very effective strategy of using social media. They're very slick. They have actually paid a lot of money to bring Hollywood types in and make some very slick videos. And this goes to my second point. They've been able to focus on a group, a specific group, that is essentially vulnerable to their message. And there's a lot of folks out there. And it doesn't matter if they're rich or poor. I found it totally laughable when all these people just don't have jobs. It's totally insane. This is all about a very severe form of extreme racism, where they believe that they are the superior race, that they have the right to basically dominate everybody else, and if you don't choose to be dominated, you can die.
That's right. I mean, isn't this the modus operandi from all over the world? It's a lot of times it's even upper middle class, spoiled brat kind of gangbanger types who want to be somebody and want to go be in an adventure and want to go rape and rob and do whatever they want. I mean, isn't this just a legion of scum?
Exactly, and they've been able to hit that nerve, and so they're able to bring these people in, and many of them, and I think in the case you saw in Texas, and I think you're going to see more of this. And by the way, a shout out to James Comey. James Comey, I do believe, is trying to do the best he can in very difficult circumstances by the fact he recognizes all these people. But we've got to do more, and essentially they're going to continue to come until we just stop them where they started in Iraq and Syria.
Stay there. I want to come back and finish up with that and then get into the larger ISIL invasion. The Islamic State has taken credit for this attack with their moron converts over here to radical Islam. We'll be back. I'm Alex Jones with Colonel Schaefer. Stay with us. We're talking to best-selling author, American soldier, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer, who was blocked twice from taking out bin Laden, confirmed right before 9/11. Very interesting, because I guess you need that enemy. A lot of folks know that I wrote the book on, and now it's even in the New York Times, on exposing false flag terror, letting groups attack you, wind-up toys, things like that. That said, Islamic State before they were even Islamic State, when they were the Syrian, Free Syrian Army, I was exposing it, tip of the spear, getting the military to talk about it, to say we won't be in al-Qaeda's Air Force. Ron Paul picked it up, Rand Paul, Ted Cruz. Colonel Schaefer was at the tip of the spear in Congress saying don't do this. We were all there. Exposing it, we started getting real threats, and I'm not supposed to get into it because law enforcement got involved and stuff, but real stuff with ISIS. And you've now seen them, up there attack the event with their wind-up toys up there in Garland. I recognize this as different, and I see a lot of liberals, a lot of trendies. May Day march this weekend I shot a video at, had folks kind of dressed up like that. A lot of Islamic State things at public events. So it's kind of a trendy thing with young people is the point I'm getting at. That's why I say I believe it's a real threat. What do you say, Colonel Schaefer?
Oh, it is. No, I think these people have struck a nerve. And some of these young people actually suffer from what you talk about. It's kind of a society that's very artificial. It's hard to fit. And what's happened is instead of people seeking the truth and seeking to become better people, what they do is they see an opportunity to belong to something. And as you mentioned right before the last break, they see this as an adventure. I mean, many of these kids, I actually work with a group called the Association of British Muslims in London, who are attempting to stop the radicalization. It's interesting because many of the Muslims who are the British Empire, from essentially the old empire states of Pakistan and India, see this as a threat. Many of them have assimilated to the British society, and they don't like this very extreme brand of Islamic hate. And it actually damages the brand, which President Obama doesn't seem to understand. This is Islamic terror. So happening right now, as you point out, is that these people, these bots, essentially, are being recruited. And it happened in Australia last year, where a bunch of these folks who were recruited were essentially told to do jihad in place. Don't come to Syria. Do what you can to disrupt the society you're in. So I think that's where this is all going. This is why James Comey, the director of the FBI, said that in every state except Alaska, you have elements of ISIS now essentially coalescing and beginning to form. And simply put, the FBI is not big enough to counter every single threat. No matter how successful they are, Alex, eventually one's going to get through the net. I think last night we saw one get through the net because apparently, as we're known to the FBI, said Texas, being what it is, I think responded very quickly and very aptly to the threat. Fortunately, I don't think we're going to see all of our states be able to pick up that tradition.
Well, and exactly, I criticize the FBI for when they get caught manufacturing plots or basically setting people up that are already radicalized. But that's higher level Justice Department stuff. Usually, just like 9/11, you had FBI at the grassroots trying to stop hijackers, ordered to stand down. In this case, it's the same thing again, where they had them in custody, know they were going to North Africa, and the judge basically released them, even though they got caught lying about it. So I think it's that the grassroots FBI gets their hands tied in real cases.
Right, that's correct. I've worked with a number of FBI agents, and yes, I have friends who are very close to the headquarters, and they're often saying, well, the headquarters is the problem. Obviously, Alex, it's the politics. Once you get past the field agents, it's the politics of up the chain of command, and I think that's where everything gets really off the rails is here in Washington, D.C.
What do you think Washington's main strategy is? Because we know they were funding the whole anti-Syria deal. Now they claim they're fighting ISIS. You're up there in a lot of classified stuff you can't get into. Is this a real war against ISIS, or what's happening?
Let's go back, and you predicted this, and we talked about this a couple of years ago. Look, the United States, had a huge role in helping ISIS get off the ground. It was the arms that left Benghazi were shipped to the Turks. The Turks gave them to these so-called moderate extremists, who then sprouted out, instead of going after the Assad, what they're supposed to do, they figured out, hey, it's easier to go after ungoverned space in Syria and Iraq, and off they went. So we had a huge hand in this. I'm not sure how we're going to atone for that. With that said, right now, it's way out of control. They've been able to establish funding, global funding. Anywhere Al-Qaeda was, ISIS will be or is soon going to overcome Al-Qaeda. So this is the problem, Alex. They have been able, through their strategy, to basically terror organization in about 18 months. And it's simply put, we are not in the game. Washington does not have a strategy to defeat them either at the local level, at the national level, or at the strategic level. Right now, it's all bets are off.
I don't think they want a strategy because they're letting them be Saudi Arabia's proxy army to take over. Wink, wink. What do you say to that?
I think that's part of the problem right now is you have people in the Middle East on both sides, and that includes the Saudis. So it is a problem.
All right, LondonCenter.org. Get his books. Colonel Schaefer, thanks for your courage and patriotism and your service.
Thanks for having me.
God bless you. We'll be back. Stay with us. The big question. The big question. People are asking on Infowars.com and the comments and many other places. Do I think that the event up in Garland, Texas, suburb of Dallas to the east, was a false flag? And I've seen criticism on YouTube and on Infowars by a minority of people saying, Jones, I'm done with you. ISIS and Al-Qaeda are fake. None of these attacks are real. I can't believe you're promoting all this propaganda. I'm the guy that wrote the book and introduced the terms that were already there but popularized self-inflicted wound, inside job, false flag, Hegelian dialectic, stage terror. Even mainstream media admits that and demonizes me for it. Now, they dumb it down and say, he says there's no radical Islam and that George Bush had a dynamite plunger like Wile E. Coyote. That's a meme that's been said on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, CNBC. In fact, we played the clips here. But last week, we played some of the clips where they say that very thing. Just like they say that I say Obama's going to invade Texas and put everybody in FEMA camps this summer. Never said any such thing. I said it's part of the ongoing conditioning with Jade Helm. And now I have my own listeners arguing with me on the street like I'm covering up Jade Helm. They think it's a takeover. It's very frustrating, okay? I've studied this so long. I know the angles. I know how the enemy operates. It's criminal networks in government and corporations creating bigger crises that they pose as the saviors to get more money and more power. They have the motive. They have the history. They've been caught. Is this new event a false flag? Even the New York Times had to admit that out of 100 foiled terror attacks in the last decade, almost all of them, the FBI went out and basically provocateured mentally ill, low IQ idiots to do it. Now, you could argue they're trying to find out who might do it, but then when you give them the bomb, give them the gun, and then bust them right before, it's pretty bad in my view. But when you let them attack, it's even worse. And I've had Ahmad Salim, the former Egyptian intelligence colonel on, and he's the guy, again, in the New York Times, CBS News, who exposed that they let that bombing go forward and didn't let the lower FBI didn't want to do it. It was the higher level, let the bombing go forward. That was a staged event. Both men that carried it out had basically 75 IQs, were on welfare, and had to be taught how to drive the truck. They were so stupid. A blind, crazy sheik who was a known terrorist, blowing up, Marine Corps bases, and he's allowed to live in New York. They're letting these people operate. It's a fact. And we have to have that come to Jesus moment that this is going on. And they're not even letting a few terrorists slip through. There's the headline, terrorist plots hatched by the FBI. They're not letting a few of these slip through so they can then get more security to actually protect the country. That'd be bad enough. They're doing it to set up a paramilitary force that'll get public support to then flip that onto the Patriot movement. And I told you that 14 years ago before it happened. Now you've watched it in slow motion happen. What a train wreck. But that doesn't mean every attack is staged. It's staged that they gave $5-6 billion we know of the last 5 years to attack Syria, Libya, Egypt. Well, it's $5-6 billion just in Syria alone. A couple billion in Libya, billions of aid into Egypt. Gosh, about $10 billion. $10 billion. Our government. And you got to say it's Obama. We always say, oh, they're all controlled by the same people. I've seen a major shift. I mean, where there's public funding by NATO and our government of Islamic State that was the Free Syrian Army. I just had Colonel Schaefer on. He said, yeah, you predicted all this 3 years ago when Benghazi happened. Yeah, because I know how this works. And Schaefer said, yes, you're correct, but it's classified, I can't tell you. He got called in and chewed out for it. And Schaefer's involved in a bunch of shadowy stuff. He's a good guy. He tried to kill bin Laden twice and was ordered by the CIA not to do it. And then he blew the whistle. Then they tried to put him in jail for it.